Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and it's another to back or not to back. Now, next week doesn't look like we'll have one of these. It looks like we have a very light week of new Kickstarters coming up. If there is, then great. If not, by all means, feel free to post in the comments down below what Kickstarter adjacent video you want. Generally, when I don't have a to back or not to back video, I instead focus on some sort of top 10 list, top 10 Kickstarters by, new creators, top 10 Kickstarters that, I don't know, you come up with an idea, maybe I'll go with it, maybe not, possibly. I mean, I guess if there's multiple ideas. Either way, let's go ahead and jump off into it, starting off directly with a giveaway announcement to basically, if you missed this video, the one on the screen over here, where I'm wearing a hoodie and a hat and doing all that, this went up last Saturday. Not this past Saturday, but last Saturday. This is going to be a giveaway that Upper Deck is running for Gen Con 2022, basically a trip for two to Gen Con, as well as a bunch of other prizes as well. This drawing that I'm doing now is not for the winner of that. They're doing a separate thing for each content creator who cover this thing, where you can win a smaller thing with, like, a card, possibly some games. I don't know exactly what you're winning, but basically to be eligible for that, you have to put your name Bob, not your name, you have to put the name Bob in the comments, and we're going to go ahead and pick that now. We have the video URL, we're filtering for Bob, filtering for duplicate users, and we're going to go ahead and pick a user. Now, don't forget, this is just for that. If you want to be Sean Pentecost, you won something. I don't know what. But reach out to me. My email's in the description down below. Reach out to me. I'll make sure to get you set up with whatever you may or may not have won. So good luck, Sean. Or I guess you already had the good luck. Maybe. I don't know. Now, if you are someone who wants to win the Gen Con 2022 giveaway from Upper Deck themselves, I'll throw a link to that down below as well. And that is basically, well, all of that. Let's go ahead and start us off with the first in general for these videos. We have Board Game Adjacent, we have Not Funding and or Cancelled, we have Updates, and then we have all the rest of the actual campaigns. Timestamps down below to absolutely everything, well, everything in this video. If you want a timestamp to something not in this video, there's only so much I can do. Anyway, starting off, we have the Meeple Light. This is definitely board game adjacent. It's a light that's a meeple. And yes, it comes with a Christmas tree topper in case you want that as well. So if you want to add a board game light to your shelf, coming in a variety of, well, I mean, it's a light, and it comes with, all the LED configurations so you can change the patterns or colors, have rotating, basically, what do you call it? Stroke-inducing strobe lights, whatever you want. You have your options in front of you. It's going to be basically a $20 pledge to get this light, $20 to get this light, variety of options. It's larger than a standard meeple, as one might imagine, because standard meeples don't give off that much light when you think about it. It does top the top of a Christmas tree, in case that's what you wanted as well. Whole bunch of options out there. It's the thing you never knew you wanted, but you always knew you needed. It's the Meeple Light. That was the worst. That was so cheesy. That was so cheesy. Anyways, the Meeple Light. Next up, we move directly to not funding. We have two games in the not funding category, both of which I'm surprised by, honestly. But first of all, we have Altenor Secrets. Altenor Secrets is going to be Labyrinth, but, much more than that. If you ever play that old Labyrinth-style game, where you're trying to move around, collect different things, and slide tiles in and out, this has a rotating Labyrinth system. I recommend watching the video. It does a solid job giving, general overview of how the game plays. A little bit of skirmish, a little bit of puzzle, movement, navigation, all that. A variety of play modes as well. $18,000 out of $58,000, which means this one is unfortunately almost certainly not funding at this point. Just not hitting those numbers. You need to hit certain numbers for you to fund on Kickstarter. This is very unlikely that I'll fund at this point, which means we are looking at a cancellation and relaunch almost certainly. Past that, though, the game is going to come with, giant miniatures. Giant's not the right word. 35mm miniatures. They're slightly larger than your average 32 or 28mm miniature. The miniatures look great. The board and the rest of the game looks, personal opinion is obviously biased here, but I find the miniatures look amazing, and the board and art for the rest of the stuff looks okay. Not bad, but it just seems like a mismatch in terms of where they put their energy. It looks like all miniatures. Again, that's my own personal bias. I'm sure you'll find people who look at it and are like, that's beautiful, it's wonderful, the aesthetic matches I don't know. Personal opinion, of course. For myself, the board does not pull me in. The miniatures, on the other hand, look great. And they're also selling the miniatures separately as well as an option, or they're selling an extra set of miniatures. So they are very much targeting miniature painters with this. Price point of this is high. You're looking at $93 as the entryway to get into this game. So that is a lot of money for a game that is untested, unvalidated, a bit of a risk, a bit of a, what's going to be making this one so special or different compared to everything else. And so, yeah. Overall, it's expensive, it's not funding, I'm expecting a relaunch. There's enough here that I think that they can repackage in relaunch and come back and actually fund, but this will not be the time, unfortunately, almost certainly not. Next up, we have Colab. Colab, which may well, I don't know if they're going to go for a cancellation and relaunch here or not. This one may well still fund. Basically, at halfway through $17,000 on a $35,000 goal, this one still could fund depending how the rest of the Kickstarter goes. Again, they've hit that, 1/3 in the first 2 days mark. At this point, they're hitting the 1/3 across the next 27 days, and then 1/3 in the last 2 days. Basically, in general, campaigns hit initial spike, end spike, and then the rest kind of slowly eking out across the middle. Whether or not they go for that, whether or not they pursue that, or try to go for cancellation and relaunch, that's a harder question. Now, this is going to be from Portal Dragon Games. Colab is going to be a game that, despite the name, is not a cooperative game. This is a competitive game about building out your own little card tableau. You can have 16 cards or so. Well, that's not true. You have a 16 card area, but as soon as someone builds 12 cards, it triggers the end game process. So yes, you can build more than 12. You probably will not build your 16. And these cards are going to be machines, monsters, potions, all these things giving you different points and abilities that you're trying to make this machination of different things that ultimately delivers the best end game to you. The rest of the game is going to be driven by actually putting out your minions and your mad scientists on the main board to gather resources and get additional abilities as you go. So it's a bit of a two-sided puzzle, one of managing the main board and one of managing your actual card tableau. It's going to be from Jonathan Gilmour and John Gaisling, I believe it is, from basically John Meetling. I always do a G for some reason because of the Gilmour. Jonathan Gilmour and John Meetling. This is going to be from Palm Island and from Dinosaur Island, and they're bringing you Colab with just delightful artwork, by the way. I recommend checking that out. But again, not currently funding. It's got a $60 price point for the single game. It's going with an $80 MSRP, $60 price point, so it's not cheap either, but we'll see how that one we'll see how that one fares. It's going to be a long road towards the finish line over there. Next up, we have Mythic Mischief. Mythic Mischief is going to be basically $386,000. This is an update, minor update here. 5 days left. There's not a lot of time to go over that much else. I've already covered the campaign in 2 prior 2 back or not to back videos. Basically, Mythic Mischief is a solid abstract game. Not overly going into it here. I've already done it multiple times. But what I would say over here is they just announced, or they just showed a solo video for the game. So if you wanted to get a taste or a feel for the solo gameplay, Austin over at IV Games just put up a solo video on his channel breaking down the solo rules. I recommend checking that out in case you are interested in this for the solo rules. If you're interested in getting a feel for, okay, great, here's this abstract, I'm a solo player, how does it fit in, does it work, does it do the job or not? So overall, if you're interested in checking that out, I recommend checking that out. Past that, ending in 5 days. Excited to see this one. Excited for my final copy. Oh, and major update. I should actually say this last time. Last week, I made a joke when I was talking about the game. I was talking about Mythic Mischief and how I'm excited for my final copy to arrive because I keep playing with it and keep breaking my miniatures because I'm not being careful enough. And I got a comment about asking, oh, well, the final miniature is going to be good quality or are they going to be the same as what you got? Which is a giant reminder to me that I need to remember not everyone always knows the things I know. So I casually talk about how I'm breaking the miniatures and I'm not worried about like a bad impression for Mythic Mischief. But I should be because some people will see that and think, oh, the miniatures are bad quality. Prototype miniatures in general are made with a completely different production process and are generally a lot more brittle and fragile than final production miniatures in almost every game across the board. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, 99% of prototypes will have significantly more breakable miniatures than what you get in a final production game. I casually talk about how I broke all my miniatures, not to scare you away from Mythic Mischief, but because I'm just not being careful enough. But your final game will be significantly different and the miniatures will be totally fine. So in case I scared anyone off with that last week, just making sure you have all the information you need this week. And then next up, another update, Agemonia. Agemonia, or is it Agemonia? And I'm just saying that. They've officially clarified. They said it's Agemonia, but mostly because they typed it, so it still could be Agemonia. Either way, Agemonia. Agemonia is a game I already covered. I have a solo playthrough of this one as well as a review. Overall, really enjoyed this RPG exploration game. I made a big point last week about how their only update, the only exclusive that they had based on the FAQ was, over here, what is the price? What are the exclusive items? The Sundrop miniatures will only be available through this campaign. Any unclaimed will be marked up and sold in the web store. Basically, they didn't have a lot of exclusive announced at the time. They had only that as an exclusive, which made the comparison of Kickstarter to retail combined with the price point a bit of a hard sell. Despite me really liking the game, it was expensive. So you could wait for retail, see what shows up there, or you could kind of get everything on Kickstarter depending on the extras you wanted, all of that. Since then, they have announced that there are going to be more Kickstarter exclusives, although they're calling it direct exclusive content. They're not calling it Kickstarter exclusive, which means you may be able to get these other options as well, feature conventions, promos, things like that, but basically more things that are not going to be in the retail edition of the game. A lot more things that totally change the question of whether you should get it now or later. So, we have the plastic chip upgrade for all heroes is going to be one thing. We have a scenario. The TTS version or large scenario of it is going to be a direct exclusive as well. We have the new actions for all the characters. All new heroes starting with Drenush are already going to be Kickstarter direct exclusives. And then as well as that, we have the Curse of Ultra Large scenario. So we have scenarios, we have skills, we have characters, we have the chips, we have anything from gameplay to content to characters. They're going to be direct exclusives, which means that totally changes the conversation around whether you should get them now or later. Meaning this is still going to be a game that's going to be cheaper at retail. But now the price point you're paying on Kickstarter does come with a lot more things locked in, which, well, changes the conversation. So if we scroll down over here to the stretch goals, wherever we can find them, I always scroll past them. Yeah, so you can see over here we have certain different things tagged accordingly. So we have direct exclusive for this, we have the direct exclusive for the chips. So a whole lot of things that are going to be additionally marked as, well, you can get it now, you can get it from our web store or conventions or some way or form later, or you can just not get it at all. So that's going to totally change the conversation around what makes the most sense. Again, still a conversation of this is still going to be a cheaper version of the game at retail. So if you just want to experience the game and you're not worried about the extras, retail is going to be your best bet there. If you want those extras, especially if you want things like Sundrop miniatures or things like that, or extra action tiles, or extra scenarios, or extra characters, well then Kickstarter may well be your best bet for all stuff you want Agemonia. And that brings us to the new stuff, the new Kickstarters and not Kickstarters as well. And I don't mean GameFound this time. I mean I'm covering Mythic Games Enchanters Darklands, which is only available on Mythic Games web shop, which is not really a Kickstarter thing, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because it felt like it made sense. Either way, Enchanters, a game which is going to be typically has in the past been a Kickstarter game, and Mythic Games that often does Kickstarter games, so that's my excuse why I'm covering it. They're doing Enchanters Darklands on the web store. Currently it's an eShop exclusive, so it's not a retail game, which is why I'm covering it, and it's a $30 price point for this game. This is going to be the newest expansion to the very popular popular Enchanters series of games, in which you're going to be combining a weapon and enchantress. So you can have, like, you know, your magnificent hammer or your aggressive flail. I'm the least creative person I know, apparently. Anyways, it has the various things you can enchant as you engage with a variety of creatures or scenarios or this cooperative, this competitive, whole bunch of gameplay modes, whole bunch of content, tons of different decks you can mix together to make sure that your games are never ever going to be the same, and that's well before Darklands. You don't need Darklands, you might just want Darklands. So, why am I talking about today? Because at the end of the day, this expansion will go to retail, at least they talk about it. A retail version of this expansion is planned, but not in this configuration. What do they mean? They're basically going to be splitting up the content of this expansion into smaller boxes, thus making it much more expensive. Now, I don't buy into those price points at all. You can pre-order for $30, or you can get total over $100. Also, the math is confusing. If the total is over $100 and you can pre-order for $30, why are we saving over $60? Isn't it saving over $70? Am I missing something? Something seems off with the math. Either way, what I would say is it does look like the retail content, once it's split up, will be more expensive. I don't know if I trust those over 100. That might be MSRP versus actual, so that makes it an apples to oranges comparison. But I do believe it will be more expensive. You can see over here, if we go ahead and look, I totally saw one of these earlier when I was here last. They had one of those small packs. Maybe if I refresh, let's see if I refresh. Depends if that's randomized or not. Nope, not seeing anything. They had additional options where you can see battered and bruised, maybe. Is this one of those options? You can see, like, you know, a little deck of, I don't know, not this. That's the wound deck. Either way, they basically split them up into, here we go, the Enchanters Rage and Laughter. So you can see over here, this is how they split them up otherwise, giving you a lot more content, a lot less content in a smaller box configuration, so, and then charging a lot more for it. So yeah, if you're interested in Enchanters, if you're interested in Enchanters Dark Lords, then this is likely the best place to get it. As far as holding its value or not, short version is the Enchanters game system is a bit of a mixed bag in terms of holding its value. It's a very popular, well-rated system. Individual expansions are hit or miss in terms of being able to say, hey, I'm selling my entire collection, or I'm selling my Darklands, what will I get for it? So in terms of holding this value in the secondhand market, I'm not confident in it. You can absolutely find the right buyer, but it's a little hit and miss because of just how much content they have. But as far as getting it for yourself, this is where I'd recommend getting it if you are interested in Enchanters Darklands. Next up, we have Unsurmountable. This is going to be the newest Button Shy games. They're the worst, by the way. I hate Button Shy. Not in terms of their games, to be very clear. I love their games, or at least some of their games, but in terms of their Kickstarters pop up with no announcement, no fanfare, not on any of the lists I ever follow. They usually just show up on Kickstarter and boom. I'm like, I have 7 days to cover this game, because they run short campaigns too, which means when their games pop up in Kickstarter, on those off weeks where I'm kind of missing a game, missing a 2-back or not 2-back, I can miss these entirely. And then they don't have late pledges either. So they're the worst for the series. They do make good games though. I just played one of these games today. I just played Food Chain Island, which is going to be one of the games from the Simply Solo game from them. Now overall, the Simply Solo line is going to be Scott Alms combined with Button Shy Games, creating solo games that fit into the 18 card decks. Things like, well, this over here, it's Food Chain Island. See, it's on the shelf right next to me. Now, so far they have Food Chain Island, and they have Ugly Griffin Inn. I like Food Chain Island a lot. I like Ugly Griffin Inn. Don't know if it stays in my collection long term, but either way, Unsurmountable is going to be the newest game from them. Basically covering you climbing up a mountain. You're going to be dealing with trying to create chains of cards as you try to get to the top of the mountain. So you're trying to look for chains of cards and or using abilities of other cards. So it's a combination of utilizing abilities and utilizing the actual configuration of the cards to create a pathway to the top of the mountain involving switching cards, adjusting cards, doing whatever. It falls perfectly in line with the type of game they make. Good on them. I'm interested in the game. As far as getting the game, price point, value, all of that, they have a few options here, as well as options to get all the other games in the line if you are interested. But they have $10 for Unsurmountable, $11 for Unsurmountable and Dual Peaks. I recommend paying the dollar and getting the extra expansion. In fact, if you're one of these 111 people who are currently backing just the base game and you're interested in saving the dollar but not getting one of the modules, let me know why. It's not that I think all the modules are essential. In fact, Food Chain Island is a good example where I don't like one of the module expansions they have. But I don't know that until I buy it, and for the dollar, I'm going to get it and find out here. That's my own personal bias. Unless, of course, and this is the part I'm always curious about, unless you're one of those 111 people and you didn't realize that this wasn't the full game, and you didn't realize that this pledge level existed. So there's that PSA for you if you needed it. Anyways, next up they have the Simply Solo Fan for $30, giving you, well, Food Chain Island, Ugly Griffin Inn, and then $50 you get all the stuff as well. And then if you're like me and you have some of the stuff, you might want to try to get your hands on, well, some of the extra expansions. You know, I think they have extra expansions over here. They had Food Chain Island. They have some, I have to double check. I believe there's a pledge level or pledge option add-ons. That's what it was. They have add-ons to get some of these extras for like Food Chain Island, which I plan on touching. You know, the legendary creatures. Will these help me? Will I like them? Will I not? Won't know till I try. So I'm going to go ahead and add those to my pledge. In any case, that's all that. As far as holding its value, in general, the Button Shy line of games, they're cheap and they're small, which means it's a little bit of a hard price point for you to turn around and sell in the secondhand market and get your money back. It's usually the best. The Kickstarters are usually the best place for you personally to get your pledge, but in terms of selling in the secondhand market, it's not like you get a lot of money back for it. Once you get all the expansions, the modules, the extra packs, I usually recommend just getting on the Kickstarter if you're interested, but yes, you'll probably lose a few bucks when you turn around and sell it yourself. Moving on, we have the Little Flower Shop dice game. This is going to be by Dr. Finn's Games, and this is going to be the dice game version of the Little Flower Shop, a game he already has that's been on Kickstarter, been expanded upon, and now he's bringing the dice game to this. This is going to be a game where you're going to roll dice, lock them in, try to, you know, combine them to get the various things you need as you display them on your shelf. Similar gameplay to the Little Flower Shop, just more abstracted to dice rolling because it's the dice version of that game. This is going to feature typical Dr. Finn gameplay, lots of elegant, simple adjustments to trying to get what you need. This is going to be 283 backers, $12,000, 8 days to go, and the price point for this is going to be $20 to get your hands on this, and then you can combo it up to get the Flower Shop as well. As far as will it hold its value, best place to get all of that. Generally, the Dr. Finn's Kickstarters are going to be the best place to get some of his games if you're talking about retail or Kickstarter. The price point usually save about $5 by getting it on Kickstarter, because either way you have to pay shipping for it, and it's usually a few dollars more expensive once it gets to his web store. And he doesn't really sell it to a lot of other places. That's going to be options there. The other option is going to be the secondhand market, where some of his games will be available. They don't have huge availability, but you will be able to get his games slightly cheaper on the secondhand market, even once you factor in shipping. You're talking about saving a few bucks though. Once you factor in the shipping price, you're not saving that much. You're saving a few bucks. And of course, with 283 backers, the amount of these that will hit the secondhand market, granted 8 days to go, so we'll see how it plays out, but the amount of these that will hit the secondhand market is not going to be a ton. So it falls in the category of the Kickstarter is likely the best place for you to get your hands in it, but it will not hold its value, or almost certainly will not hold its value, at least based on prior small box games from the Dr. Finn's line of games. Next up, we have Dog Park, a beautiful board game about walking dogs. And Dog Park is exactly what it sounds like. It's a beautiful board game about walking dogs. A first-time creator, first-time company, although they clearly know what they're doing between the game page, the deluxe and standard version of the game trays, the content creators, anything and everything going on this page. There's a lot of stuff going on here that has me having a decent amount of confidence in them, while also not being necessarily confident of the game itself. Not necessarily that it's bad or good, just I don't know anything. This is going to be a set collection game where you're going to be going for walks. You're going to be walking different dogs, managing your walks, making sure that each dog gets walked at the right time. You could prioritize other dogs, but then you'll have to take penalties for the ones that didn't get walked properly, but you might be the best way to go based on trying to, well, combine as many dogs as possible and getting more points that way, all while you try to gather and cater and suit to these specific dogs and what they want and all of that. Featuring a standard version of the game that's going to run you basically $54, or a deluxe version of the game, a collector's edition of the game, that's going to run you $65. So $11 more, which is not nothing, but it's giving you a bunch more content, including 29 famous dogs, 29 European dogs, whole bunch of stuff over there. If we scroll down over here, we can see the deluxe edition. You can also get the playing cards as well, the collector's edition and playing cards. So you're getting a decent amount for that $11. Overall, I'd recommend the collector's edition of the game if you are interested in this game. Again, as far as, and we have game trays, we have a whole bunch of stuff going on, all in this collector's edition, which makes it a much better back, in my opinion. As far as will it hold its value, will it's not, this is a hard one for me to say because it does depend heavily on how good the game is. As a first-time creator coming to Kickstarter in the current market where everything's saturated, people are pulling back pledges, trying to save money where and when possible, but they're still doing 2,187 backers, $134,000, which is amazing. Good job, good on them, very happy for them. But that also means so that there's going to be an audience around the game that just based on the fact that they did a good job with the game, with the production, with the art, with the theme. So they have an audience already. Whether the game is good and how well it holds its value, that's going to be a bit of a conversation there. I think the $65 price point for the collector's edition of the game is fairly reasonable. I think that the game is halfway decent. It likely will hold its value on the secondhand market. It's a little bit of a gamble here, a little bit uncertain, but the price point seems pretty decent for what you get, plus the theme clearly has found an audience, so now it's just a question of how good the game is. It does not have to be amazing to hold its value. It just has to be pretty decent. It has to find the target audience and do well, and from what I can see, I think they will. I think they have enough know-how, game know-how, Kickstarter know-how to be delivering a decent game. Whether decent, good, or great, all that is a different conversation, but I think your money's safe on the collector's edition of this game. Moving on, we have Master of the Universe, the board game, Clash for Eternia. Now, I already did a full dedicated should you back it for this. This is going to be the, well, to back or not to back. I do roundups of these games. If you want the full dedicated video, you can check that out there. This is CMON's newest Kickstarter, with $1 million raised, which is still pretty good, by the way, because you have to factor in that CMON Clash for the Master of the Universe Clash for Eternia is a game that's region locked. So CMON can't sell to anyone and everyone. They can only sell it to a subset of the normal audience. In fact, you can see the other $1 million of this campaign is gone bye-bye over on Arkan's page. So you can check out Arkan's page, Arkan Studios, where they have the Fields for Eternia, which is their own version of the CMON of the Master of the Universe game, and that raised $1 million. I think it's over $1 million by the time it's done, and so that's going to be $1 million just basically taken out of this campaign. Not perfectly dollar for dollar, obviously, but basically the fact that they're only at $1 million with a few days in kind of makes sense. I still thought it would have been higher, and they'll still cross $2 million by the time it's done, but overall that's a short rundown there. And yes, if you're in Europe, you will not be able to get this game unless you sign up to swap pledges with somebody or get it sent to some sort of package forwarder, so there are different options on the table for you there. As far as the gameplay itself, it's going to be a one versus many game. I have a full review on it. I have a gameplay on it. If you check out Cracklop's channel, there's gameplay, how to play, overview, tons of content over on this game. This one for me is basically bringing back the rural Elder Smog, Rise of Moloch, but different. It captures many of the same elements, and that's a game system that I love from CMON, and this is different with a new IP, different ways the game plays, lots of scenario based, not campaign based, which means it'll likely hit the table more frequently in my opinion, and just powers and abilities left, right, and center, whether you're playing as the Overlord or the individual characters. Tons of ways to level up, do different things, and just use all that power that someone is handing your way. So lots of fun. Overall, we like the game. As far as the should you back it, should you not, and we'll talk about some updates in a second. I'll probably have a full update video on this by the time we hit the end of the campaign. I tend to do that with CMON games. I like CMON games, and so they get extra attention from me. It's just I'm biased. But either way, as far as pledge levels, you have $110 for the Master of the Universe pledge. You have $220 for the Defender of Grayskull pledge. So that's going to be the main pledge levels now. That is what we have now. There are going to be additional pledge levels before this campaign is over for the all-in bundles, all of that stuff. But overall, we have, where's the Defender of Grayskull? And these are going to be the stretch goals, by the way. So stretch goals, what you can see so far, we already have, 8 different heroic warriors added on as stretch goals. There will be more. We already have 8 more evil warriors and a 9th one on the way with Whiplash. So again, more content, just tons of variability to the game. We have the Battle Cat. We have a whole bunch of content in terms of the deluxification upgrades. We have plants, boulders, objective tokens, all of which will make your board game more immersive, more thematic. We have the daily reveals, which include more characters, more exclusives, more overlays, some lesson cards, which are hilarious. As someone had posted, this is simultaneously the best and worst update ever, and I need it now. Or the best and worst stretch goal ever, and I need it now. It's lesson cards where you can draw them at the end of a chapter and be like, the importance of teamwork, blah 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 blah. Scandaloh will be back for another lesson. It's hilarious. Either way, we have Prince Adam, and then we have the Defender of Grayskull pledge, which is going to be giving you the giant castle, as well as gameplay around that castle. Now, you don't need both. You can get the gameplay without the castle, you get the castle without the gameplay, or you can get it together in this pledge level and get both. The gameplay is going to be a bit of an assault on a castle kind of scenario, so it's utilizing that giant hoard of plastic, or you can put it on the table and your kids can utilize it, and by your kids, I mean you when no one else is looking, or actually your kids, either one's fine. Past that, they already released one of the big updates in terms of the optional buys, which is going to be the, let's go ahead and show you over here, the She-Ra expansion. So for all the people who wanted She-Ra as an expansion, well, you got it. If you get the Join the Great Rebellion pledge over here, $50 for more content for the game. Do you need more content for the game? No, you don't. You don't need more content for the game. Do you want more content? Yes. Yes, you want more content. I mean, I want more content for the game. And this is basically all the She-Ra stuff, She-Ra Princess of Power, the Great Rebellion, tons of stuff over here, giving you, miniatures and more miniatures, and miniatures on miniatures, in case you want miniatures on that. You have just tons of, thematic, all the stuff. I don't know what I'm saying here. Just more miniatures. More stuff is what I'm saying. And yes, there is going to be a Kickstarter exclusive in terms of getting this now. So you're going to get a cowl as an exclusive bonus, which is going to be a token in the regular game, or a miniature in the Kickstarter version, which is the reason you'll get this here as opposed to getting the expansion at retail, plus, of course, the all-in pledge when they actually announce that as well, which will further add to the reason to get the everything on Kickstarter. You'll save like $30 compared to everything. You're still going to be spending like $350 because that's the way a CMON Kickstarter is run. They have optional buys, they have upgrades, they have all these tons of things that will improve your experience. But then, yes, you do pay for a lot of stuff. You don't need any of that stuff. You can back this game, you can buy this game at retail and have a decent, solid playing experience off the bat. You don't need all the rest. Unless, of course, you want to play this a lot, in which case that's a different conversation. If you're looking for a bunch of reasons to, be incentivized not to back it, I'll throw a link down below to another channel, Room and Board, where he goes through 5 reasons not to back this Kickstarter campaign. I agree with all of them. I'm still backing it. Anyways, moving on, we have Ambal Tournament Foundation. Ambal Tournament Foundation is going to be 8,000 backers, $8,000, not backers, 165 backers, and 16 days to go. This is going to be another 2-player head-to-head card game. I say another because it's a very overcrowded, popular genre to make. It's easier to tend to prototype, to play, to produce, and that does mean you get a little bit of an oversaturation in the market, and it's not that anyone is particularly bad or good. In fact, I've played a lot of them that are great, but it makes them harder for them to stand out and makes them harder to get a foothold in the market as being, that's the 2-player game you want to get. Notable exceptions are going to be Roxley Games. They had their Dice Stone series, which really did take off, despite being a 2-player head-to-head card-based combat system. Then again, they overproduced that thing through the wazoo, making it ridiculously pretty and cool, and then threw on a dungeon crawler on top of it. I'm getting sidetracked on a tangent here, not the point. The point is that Ambal Tournament is going to be another 2-player game with simultaneous play, tons of unique cards, lots of everything looks good here. Just my skepticism does not come from the fact it doesn't look good. It does look good. I want to play this game. I see the game. The cars, everything looks fun. It looks like there's a lot of fun stuff here. It's just there's a very saturated market in terms of the 2-player head-to-head card game systems, and that does mean this is going to have a harder time being popular here as well as on the second-hand market. In terms of getting the game, I would say getting it on Kickstarter is likely your best bet. With 165 backers, even with that number growing, you're not going to find this game in popular anything. It's not going to be easily distributed by a lot of places. It's not going to be readily available in terms of the second-hand market. I would say if you want this game, the Kickstarter is likely your best bet. It'll run you $33 for the basic, foundation pledge or whatnot. Any other pledge levels, not really in terms of the main pledge levels. You can get 2 copies or whatever it is. But yeah, it's not going to be one that I think holds its value, not in the second-hand market. Again, it's just a popular genre. It's a crowded genre. It's hard for games to stand out. Moving on. We have Scandaloh, Unravel the Scandal. Now, this is going to be the first of 2, not reprints, but second editions that have a lot of overlap with the first edition, where the first edition was really popular and was hard to get your hands on and sold out and sold for above its value because it was popular and hard to get your hands on, and both of them deal with political themes. Basically, I'm talking about Scandaloh and Shasn. We'll talk about Shasn shortly. But either way, Scandaloh, Unravel the Scandal is going to be the newer version of Awkward Guess. And I say newer version because there's a lot of similarity between the 2 games and yet differences at the same time. And in fact, I have to congratulate them. I have to congratulate them for one of the best FAQs I've seen in terms of quickly and easily addressing a lot of people's answers. So Awkward Guess is going to be a game rated at 7.7 on BoardGameGeek, got rave reviews from anyone from the Dice Tower to anyone, to Table Knots. Table Knots called it their best, social deduction, not social deduction, their best, social deduction, no, deduction, just deduction game that they have, and overall, and he covered, by the way, Table Knots covers Scandaloh as well, so you can check a video for that. They'll cover it all. I also saw Thinker-Themer also covered this game, comparing them as well, and they said it played well at 2, which was a surprise for me. I wouldn't have thought that Scandaloh plays well at 2. But both these games, the FAQ over here, which I started talking about before I got sidetracked, the FAQ covers a lot of questions very comprehensively, very well. What are the similarities between the 2 games? It goes through that. What are the differences? What makes it different? Why aren't you unlocking stretch goals? What's included as Kickstarter exclusive content? That's helpful. I love when information is that clear. We're going to have, all pledge levels include the base, also include the Kickstarter exclusives. These will be special and limited edition components and extras that won't be available in retail. They're not essential to gameplay. Again, it goes through it very clearly. What about the breaking news? Why pledge for the breaking news pledge? Because I'll get to that pledge in a second. Well, it's basically going to include 36 exclusive scenarios. So the FAQ covers every question I had very clearly. If you have any questions about the campaign, I recommend checking that out. Which brings us to the pledge levels of this game. We have the Journalist pledge level, and in short version, in case it wasn't clear, is Scandaloh is the slightly updated, slightly changed version of Awkward Guess. There's a lot of similarity between the 2 games, and yet there's potentially reason to own both, but not necessarily. If you already own and have and are happy with Awkward Guess, then I recommend really diving into those differences, because Scandaloh may or may not be something that's useful to yourself. If you don't have Awkward Guess, then Scandaloh is a great time to jump in, especially because Awkward Guess is frequently between print runs and harder to get your hands on it. As far as the pledge levels, we have the Journalist pledge level, which is $38, and then we have the Editor-in-Chief pledge level, which is going to give you the breaking news book. That's going to be the 36 extra scenarios. That's going to be $50 over there. And you can see 130 people chose the Journalist, 455 chose the Editor-in-Chief, and that's going to be, the main pledge levels there, and then we have, giant pledge levels for whatever it is. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? Short version is it should. The original game, if Awkward Guess is anything to go by, this is a game that will do just fine in terms of selling it for above its pledge level once you actually get it, and then in between print runs, when it's hard to get your hands on, it may well sell for 2 times its cost, because that's what happened with Awkward Guess. It was a well-liked game, people kept talking about it, people said good things about it, and then it was hard to get your hands on the game, which meant it went for well above its actual sale price, because it's a 7.7 on BoardGameGeek for a well-liked game that people kept on saying ridiculously. What did Tom Bass say? My favorite deduction game ever. And Table Knots as well, and other channels as well. Thinker-Themer. We have Board Games in a Minute. Tons of different channels talking about the game. Tons of different opinions around the game. Well-liked game. So yes, I think this one will hold its value just fine. Moving on, we have Sushi Boat, an interesting game using a deluxe board almost by design. Sushi Boat's going to be a game as you manage different objectives while you take sushi from this moving sushi boat, which means you actually kind of need this deluxe board because otherwise it would be an absolute pain to try to deal with pushing and shoving tokens back and forth. But anyways, this is going to be a game that's going to be coming from Japanime Games. I always say that poorly. And it's going to be a game that it's going to be $60 is going to be the entry pledge for this deluxe version, the Kickstarter version of the game. There is no retail version on Kickstarter, but it's going to be, well, again, giving you a puzzly style gameplay of managing, collecting sushi before it goes all the way around, and then taking what you need and scoring as many points as possible, all while dealing with this, again, fairly unique implementation of a general sushi concept in a sushi genre of games, which we actually have a decent amount of sushi themed games, none of which have used the Sushi Boat until now, so solid job there. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? At $60 for the base pledge for this game, and not a ton of people backing it, 414 backers, decent but not a ton. I think this is one where if you're interested in the game, then Kickstarter is possibly your best option, but not necessarily. 414 crosses that line enough that we will see copies in the secondhand market. How many is a question, and then the price point is going to be, well, how much? Is it going to be $40 in the secondhand market, 35, 65? A little harder to say with this one because of the very nature of this inherent deluxe version of the game. So a little bit harder to say for sure where the best place to get this game is. As far as whether it will hold this value or not, I'm skeptical that it will. Like I said already, that $60 price point for this game, a lighter style game from Japanime Games, that their games in general do fine but not amazing on the secondhand market. I think this would likely continue that trend. So I don't think it will hold its value, but in terms of you being interested in personally, Kickstarter might be the best way to go, but even then the secondhand market might be just as fine. Moving on, we have Shasn Azadi. What will freedom cost? Now, so like Scandaloh before this, Shasn and Shasn Azadi, which are two different games, are going to be, well, two different games. We have Shasn Azadi is the newer version of Shasn, but bringing you different gameplay. It's going to be a longer game. It's going to be a little more semi-cooperative in the gameplay style. Both of them are giving you political choices that are going to define how you approach different things. How will you approach rebellion? How will you approach politics? What will you do as you go through this game, giving you a thematic and mechanical tie-in to a solid system that's rated incredibly well. The original game, the original Shasn, and by the way, I highly recommend watching the video over here, not just this video, but this video is further down the page that I recommend watching as well. Like, I mean, particularly this one over here, they did some solid jobs in terms of giving you really good content that pulls you in and immerses you in the promise of this political, rebellion, immersive, thematic game that looks really, really solid. It went from being not on my radar at all to a game system that I really want to try out just because, well, it looks really, really solid, and the gameplay looks simple and elegant. The original game, the original Shasn, was coming in at a 2.69 weight on Board Game Geek, so definitely has a degree of mechanical heft behind it, but not being so out of reach. Shasn Azadi, it's hard to say for sure because it's a newer game, so we don't have a lot of data, but currently it's coming in at 3.69, so it's a slightly heavier game, which means for me, I kind of want both. I'm not sure what's the better choice for me. I'm getting distracted and sidetracked. 1,000 backers, $128,000 raised. This is an expensive game. I probably should have led with that before talking about all the hype and why I'm pulled in and why it went from being not on my radar to a game that I really want, not just one, but both of these. So I apologize. The original Shasn basically sold on Kickstarter for, I think it was around $60, $70, and then on the aftermarket, it sold for above that. It was selling for above $100 because, again, similar to Awkward Guess, we have a well-rated game, people liked, and limited availability, which meant it went up on the secondhand market. Now, unlike Awkward Guess, Shasn Azadi, when it comes back to Kickstarter, is bringing you higher price points, so it's not as clear as far as that price point differential. The original base game is more expensive. If you want that base game, you can get it for $80 for the retail edition, or $99 for the original presidential edition of Shasn. That's the original game. That's not Azadi. If you want Azadi, then Azadi as an expansion is going to run you $99. That means it's utilizing some base game components from Shasn. So you're using both together for $99, $125 for Azadi standalone, and if you want both of them together, that'll run you $200, which is not bad for the presidential edition of Shasn, the Kickstarter version of Azadi. $200, I mean, not bad's relative when I'm talking about spending $200, but comparing to getting them separately, this does seem like your best option for this pledge level over here. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? I think it still will. While the gap is definitely a little lower because the price point has gone up, there is a clear demand for this game. The Kickstarter will only bring more eyes to the system, to the game, and that potentially does mean more hype, more buzz, more whatever, which means more people who are interested in the game, more people who pass on the Kickstarter because they are responsible and reasonable and don't get the game because they're responsible and reasonable, all those good things. But that does mean that you'll have people who are hunting it down after. You'll have people who hear about the original game because there'll be a renewed interest in the game once this Kickstarter launches, as well as the expansion because we have the Azadi expansion now, giving you more gameplay options, and you will have people hunting this down. I do believe this one will hold its value. It's still a little bit hard to say because, again, it's expensive, and it does seem to fall in the range of what the current one is going for on the secondhand market. But I don't necessarily think it's a good back in terms of, like, making more money back on it. But in terms of holding its value, I think your money is safe with Shasn and Shasn Azadi. Moving on, we have One Deck Galaxy, $116,000 range, $116,000 raised, $2,600, 26 days to go. This is going to be, well, the new version of One Deck Dungeon. We had One Deck Dungeon, we had One Deck Dungeon Force of Shadows, and now we have One Deck Galaxy. So lots of subsequent editions of games coming to Kickstarter today. Or this week. But anyways, One Deck Galaxy is going to be bringing you, more of that gameplay. This one is going to be, unlike some of the prior ones, which I was a little more positive on, this one is not going to be the best back in terms of holding its value. The main pledge level, it's going to be running you $25 plus shipping, and it's going to have an MSRP of $30. You absolutely should not be getting that pledge level. It'll be cheaper at retail. And absolutely is probably a bit harsh if you want to support the creator, if you want to get it earlier, sure. In terms of the cost and the price point, this is a game that's going to be cheaper at retail for that base pledge. If you are interested in the game, then I do recommend the Star base level, the 1 Deluxe level, where you're going to be getting the deluxe version of the game, which is going to be harder to get at retail. It's going to have plastic cards, upgraded components, and yes, they've already confirmed subsequent expansions to the game will also be available on Kickstarter with a deluxe version of the game so that your game systems match. So they have confirmed that. But yeah, overall, this is one where I'm happy for them. I mean, this is a well-liked system with a popular fan base behind it, which is why we're seeing, even at a pledge level that doesn't make sense, we're seeing 686 backers pledging more than they need to, just to get the game, because why not? They want to get the game, they'll spend the extra $5-10, and they'll get the game sooner, support the publisher, and it's a system they like, so why not? That's going to be One Deck Galaxy. Moving on, we have ThreeTale. ThreeTale coming back to Kickstarter. This one technically is in the not yet funded category, but I believe it will fund within a matter of days, so I kind of threw it over here. But either way, ThreeTale, 80% funded. This is one that I really enjoyed the system. They had to unfortunately cancel the first time. They're coming back to Kickstarter. I really like this game, and speaking selfishly, I want to see this fund. So if you can go ahead and back this game, that would be great. Although wait till I'm done, because I do want to be fair to you. So, ThreeTale is a game where, overall, this is one where you're trying to go through the past, the future, the present, all these things. For me, all of that is a thematic twist and tie-in that I didn't get much out of personally. For me, I condensed this game into the idea of spend half your game building up your stats, building up your character, attacking baddies, hunting for treasure, and ultimately building up your stats, building up your character, and then spend the second half of the game dealing with the prophecy and executing on the characters you've built while dealing with different endgame systems that will have different ways you approach them, different aspects of how the map closes down around you, and how you, go through all of the building you did in the first half. This is a game that I jokingly referred to as stat building the game, and I don't mean that as a negative thing, I meant that as a positive. It's a game where you're constantly upping all your stats, both between generic stats as well as custom stats for your own individual characters. I really enjoy this game. I highly recommend it both as a solo experience and as a 3-player experience. It does not play 4 players, unless you guys want to share control of a character, which would be awkward. As far as playing 2 players, it kind of means one person is going to be controlling 2 characters, one person is going to be controlling 1. I don't think it's great as a 2-player experience. I think it is best at 1 and 3, good at 2, and not really at 4. But overall, that's a bit of a side point. I really enjoy this system is what I'm saying. Now, they do have a few pledge levels over here. They have the $59 compact box pledge level. They have the $83 ThreeTale core box, which is going to give you the main experience with all the content. And then we have the $118 ThreeTale core box plus the Moon Glow expansion, giving you just tons more content for the game. And then, of course, stretch goals, daily unlocks, all that stuff that's going to be coming out throughout the course of the campaign. This is one where, despite my enjoyment of the game, despite me really wanting this game to come to life, I do think it falls in the category of a game that is unlikely to hold its value. This game is expensive. I think Kickstarter might be your best opportunity to get it. We have a decent amount of backers. We have 368 backers, but again, it's under that 500 mark, which means the secondhand market is not going to have a ton of these copies, and it's not going to see wide distribution, at least not until there's a third Kickstarter, which might happen, but it's a little hard. 368 backers is not a lot of backers. So overall, this one does fall in the category of Kickstarter may well be your best opportunity to get this game, but it's not one where I think it'll hold its value. The high price point combined with the lack of current interest in the Kickstarter means it is one that I just don't think you're going to get $118 back for that base game plus expansion that you get. I really like the game. I selfishly want you to back it, but I'm also going to be fair to you at the same time. And that's going to be ThreeTale, a game that I really like, a game that I really hope funds. We'll see how many copies I can buy. No, we'll see. Either way, we'll talk about it, but that's going to be ThreeTale. Moving on, and Lastly, we have Verdant. Verdant is the last game we are covering today, with 39 days to go. This is a long Kickstarter. I think Flat Out Games didn't get the memo that nobody does long Kickstarters anymore. 30 days is like the longest, and now people are shifting more and more to like 14 and 21. And in the case of Button Shy Games and their annoyingness trying to make my life hard, like 8-day campaigns. But either way, Verdant, with 39 days to go, 4,500 backers, $136,000 raised. This is another one that's going to do tremendously well for them. Cascadia and Calico both did solid job. What Cascadia did, how many backers? Cascadia did 9,000 backers. That's insane. 9,000 backers. So we're already halfway there with 39 days to go. I think this one will rival Cascadia in terms of where it gets to. We'll see. It still has to double its funding, still has to double the backer numbers, but it could well rival Cascadia. The price point is going to be the same, coming in at $29, giving you access to the base game plus shipping, giving you access to the base game plus the promo pack or whatnot, which is the reason to get this on Kickstarter. One of the reasons. Once you factor in shipping, it ends up being roughly the same as retail, but you are getting the extra pack as well. Past that, let's cover the gameplay shortly before we go into the should you back it, should you not. The gameplay of Verdant is going to follow the typical style of Calico and Cascadia. In fact, if you want, I have a full play this, not that video on the channel where myself, Jesse, Shira, and Rena compare the three games and tell you which ones we like more and why, from Calico, Cascadia, and Verdant. In terms of, those are all going to be Flat Out Games designs. Calico is going to be the tight tenseness of building out a quilt that perfectly fits all these scoring objectives. Cascadia is going to be a lot more open world as you try to fill different animal objectives and scoring patterns, and then Verdant feels like almost like a combination of the two, bringing you precise structure of what you're building out, aka Cascadia, aka Calico, but giving you a little bit more freedom in the way, and also the drafting mechanism being more similar to Cascadia. Ultimately, what you're doing is every single round you're drawing a tile, which is going to be a special tile, plus either a room or a plant, and then trying to match up your rooms and plants in this grid pattern such that your plants and rooms are all providing the right amount of sunlight so that your plants can develop and grow as fast as possible, scoring you giant chunks of points, because ultimately this game is about scoring giant chunks of points, as are all their game systems. That's going to be what's going on in Verdant. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? Short version is at a $29 price point. That $29 price point for the game plus shipping, you're just fine in that one. If you look at Calico, if you look at Cascadia, it's a no-brainer, the second-hand market for those games. Once you factor in the Kickstarter exclusive extras you get, those are going to be, they are sought after. The original Cascadia is going for $49 plus shipping on the second-hand market, and it costs $29 on the Kickstarter. So I think you're totally safe as far as will it hold its value, will it not, if you're interested in this game. But that's basically that. And then these prototypes. So this is the second time this 2 weeks now that I'm seeing prototypes being sold for a giant chunk. It's like $249 for a prototype copy of the game, and no, you can't buy my prototype because that's not allowed. But either way, that's going to be everything going on with Verdant. It's a game it's another solid game from Flat Out Games. I continue to look forward to what they bring to the table next time, because I've liked every single one of their games so far. Some more than others, but I've enjoyed every single one of their systems, and Verdant is no exception. But that is everything. That is going to be your picks of the week. Gotta remember this. We still have our picks of the week. I even have the tab picture up over there. So, as far as picks of the week, in general, the way I do this is I do 2 picks of the week. I do one for the value pick of the week. That doesn't mean the cheapest game. It doesn't mean the best bang for your... Well, it does mean best bang for your buck, because it means the game that I think that will give you the most holding its value on the second-hand market or whatever it is, in terms of a game that you should be getting on Kickstarter. as opposed to retail if you are getting the game. That's going to be my value pick of the week. As far, well, not that, that's how I describe it. And then my personal pick of the week is the game I am most interested in as far as enjoyment goes. And for our value pick of the week, we have Master of the Universe, the board game. This should not be a surprise. CMON in general, their games hold their value just fine. If you are on the fence about this game, get the $110 pledge. The amount of extras you're going to get with that pledge are absolutely insane. Should you get everything? That's up to you. You don't need it. You probably shouldn't get it. But as far as getting it retail versus paying that extra $30-40 and getting on Kickstarter, the amount of content you get extra for that extra $30-40, I always recommend CMON base pledges being an incredibly good value and absolutely worth getting if you are in any way interested in the game. Whether you upgrade for more is a different conversation. That's going to be a conversation between you, your wallet, your significant other, whatever other factors are in there. It's a lot more money. You do get more stuff, but it's the base pledge where I highly recommend it if you're in any way interested. As far as my personal pick of the week, it's going to be ThreeTale. I really like ThreeTale. ThreeTale is a lot of fun, both solo and 3-player, to just go through and build out your stats. My biggest complaint about the game is going to be, two biggest complaints. I want a 2-player mode, so I can just, if I'm playing it with a friend of mine who likes ThreeTale, it's the kind of game where I totally would play 2 players, but I don't want it to be awkward where it would be right now, so I kind of want something for that. And then I also had a complaint about I want to see the characters, and this is something they actually have made changes to since I've played it, so it's a little hard to say, but I want to see more development of players' personal stats in terms as opposed to the generic stats, and they have made some gameplay changes to hopefully address that, which I have not played with the changes yet, so I can't speak for that. But that is going to be everything. That is going to be your to-back or not-to-back everything as far as a chunk load of games, chunk load of updates, stuff, things not funding, lots of fun games, and also some games that are still a good pick. We have Shasn, we have Scandaloh, we have Master of the Universe, some solid games that will hold their value or should hold their value just fine, which is nice considering last week was all doom and gloom about all the Kickstarters getting more and more expensive, which is still happening, but still some lights shining amongst the shadows. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and as always, have a good one.